Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2002 comedy drama titled About Schmidt. Now, About Schmidt runs for 2 hours and 4 minutes long. It is directed by Alexander Payne. It is produced by Michael Besman and Harry Gitz. The script was written by Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor. It is based off of the novel by Louis Bagley. The score was done by Rolf Kent, the cinematography by James Glennon, and it was edited by Kevin Tent. And the stars of the movie are Jack Nicholson, Kathy Bates, Hope Davis, Dermot Mulroney, June Squibb, Reverend Howard Hesseman, Mr. Moore, Harry Groener, Connie Ray, Len Cariou, and Phil Reeves. Films exist for different reasons, and the indisputable raison d'etre for About Schmidt is to showcase Jack Nicholson giving a master class in the art of screen acting. A bit slack in its first half before erupting in some character-based hilarity in the latter going. Alexander Payne's look at an ordinary man's late-life crisis lacks the sharp satiric kick of his earlier efforts, especially Election, but is marked by knowing observations about the Midwestern middle class and a generally sagacious posture. The picture will be a tricky sell for New Line Cinema, which will have to get out the world about the film's comic content, as well as to emphasize that this is one of Nicholson's major performances. The script by Payne and Jim Taylor, which represents a synthesis of a script the former wrote years ago, and an adaptation of Louis Bagley's novel, examines a man at a crossroads as he passes from a productive working life to a potentially bleak retirement. Warren Schmidt, played by Jack Nicholson, has worked as an actuary for an insurance company in Omaha for his entire life, and now at 66 is just simply being put to pasture. Out with the old, in with the new. I'm here, goodbye, boo-hoo-hoo. He has no particular plan other than to drive around in his enormous Winnebago he's brought at his wife's insistence. While he's not exactly bitter about his circumstances, he's not really happy either. Everything wife Helen, played by June Squibb, does and says bugs him. And he disapproves of the man whom his only child, Jenny, played by Hope Davis, is about to marry. The opening reels are graced with insights into the traditional lifestyles of Omaha, which is Payne's hometown and location of all his films to date, and Schmidt's disenchantment is expressed in quiet ways that indicate his need to escape. These include his ducking out of his pale and heavy retirement party to have a drink alone in a bar, secretly foster parenting an orphan child from Tanzania, with whom he begins a correspondence, and popping into a fast food restaurant just to slightly prolong his time away from his chronically nagging wife, Helen. Suddenly, however, Helen dies from a blood clot while cleaning his house, and in the days throughout the funeral period, Schmidt badgers Jenny, who has come from Denver with her fiancé, Mr. Waterbed himself, Randall, played by Dermot Mulroney, to stay a little longer and to consider postponing her wedding. But Jenny resists all of her father's entreaties, which also even includes him not contributing enough to pay for the all-expensive Winnebago that his wife demanded, and that she was buried in a cheap casket rather than a much more elaborate one to her request, leaving him of a mind to make the most of the time I have left. His first move is to let the immaculate house go completely to seed. And when he finds some incriminating letters revealing a long-ago indiscretion between Helen and his best friend, he clears her things out of the house and sets off in earnest to torpedo Jenny's wedding plans, a visit she manages to postpone until the weekend of the event. No question about it, this guy's one stubborn son of a bitch. Schmidt has felt all along that Randall, who works a low-end job as a waterbed salesman and sports a Fu Manchu mustache and a long ponytail that are hilariously déclassé, isn't good enough for his daughter, and he's not up to snuff. He feels that she can do much better, being that she's smart and educated and has her whole life ahead, but instead she's wasting it away on this bohemian simpleton. But hey, it's her choosing, and who she should choose to marry should be up to her. She's an adult, she must make her own decisions. But he still feels she can do much better, even though she rebuffs at everything he requests. He finds out why when he arrives in Denver and meets the young man's family, a remotely crew whose antics send the picture into major comic upswing. We meet his father, Larry, played by the Reverend Dr. Johnny Fever himself, Howard Hesseman. I mean, I could actually picture Johnny Fever as an older guy in the state he's in, drinking beer, practically being nothing more than just a couch potato, beer swiveling bohemian. Giving Nicholson a run for his money here is Kathy Bates, who is sensationally funny and on the money as an aging flower child and earth mother who's twice been divorced and has no shortage of opinions on every topic. Her startling upfront nude scene, yes, that's right, Kathy Bates strips down to the nude. So if you should reach for the toilet to dunk your head in and let out a big retch, I don't blame you. It is a sight for sore eyes and sore stomach too. So she takes a little skinny dip in the jacuzzi with Schmidt in an attempt to nail husband number 3, which is something no audience would have ever expected to see, let alone want. And it's as funny as hell. Yeah, it's not so funny. Not so funny when your stomach churns, though. Kathy Bates, we love you, but keep your clothes on from now on. Don't make me want to see another horror movie as frightening as Misery. Because looking at you naked, Annie Wilkes is not the only scary thing about you. Just as the film starts with a ceremonial event of Schmidt's retirement dinner, it dramatically concludes with Jenny's wedding and reception, at which Schmidt is expected to give a speech. But instead of him trying to postpone or make an ass out of himself in his speech, he eventually caves in and gives her his blessing. All along, Nicholson has provided an open window into this man.
You could wait a minute.
One like so many, in that he has youthful ambitions to accomplish more than he actually did, but who settled into a quietly productive, conventional life, dictated by the need to provide for a family. His marriage wasn't the greatest. The nagging frustrations have presumably always been there, but never bad enough for him to overhaul everything. Nicholson definitely has plenty of opportunities to indicate his superiority to the character he's playing by indulging in his specialties of sarcastic line readings and squinty looks of disgust.
I'm not.
But he resists them all very subtly,
I want you to yell longer.
suggesting Schmidt's scorn and irritations, never losing his grip on the man's bedrock decency and solidity. When it comes time for the big speech, Nicholson makes the man's temptation say what's really on his mind vividly palpable, his acute desire to tell the assembled crowd what mutts and bozos and underachievers they are almost, but not quite overtaking his instincts as a gentleman and a human being. Nicholson's solo verbal dance during this sequence is remarkable as his hacked emotionalism just before fade out. Davis has to work with the liability of her character's unvarying, disagreeable resistance to her father as her prime attitude, while Mulroney is gamely willing to be the butt of considerable disparaging humor. The picture has a plain look, much of this depriving from the overwhelmingly grayish landscaping and pointedly mundane interior settings. Visual strategies are straightforward, although there is one stunning shot in which Jenny emerges from an out-of-focus mass of passengers disembarking from a plane to greet her father after her mother's death. So overall, I got to admit, this is really truly a great classic movie. Jack Nicholson eventually would go on to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor in a Leading Role. There were a few other nominees. I believe Kathy Bates, I think she had a Golden Globe nominee for Best Supporting Actress. I liked a lot of the dialogue. There's some great character development. Even in spite of the fact that you have to be the unfortunate witness of watching Kathy Bates strip in the nude, which could probably be enough to send you with stomach pumps, but hey, it was played for comic effect, not for seductiveness. I know it probably may not necessarily appeal to all people because, you know, in the realms of Hollywood, which seems to focus and emphasize mostly on younger people, this is actually a rare treat where the emphasis is on older people. You know, and even though Jack Nicholson is frazzled, grizzled, and maybe old, still, we have to respect our elders, and we have to respect the talents that Jack has had and that Jack has provided for us for all these years. And he, at the time, still managed to turn in a remarkable performance. It's just a shame that now these days, Jack Nicholson, who probably never anticipated of being Warren Schmidt, if you actually look at some of the things that he's done later in life, he's actually became his own Warren Schmidt, sadly. I mean, if you ever see recent pictures of Jack Nicholson, the poor old man has kind of let himself go. And today, he is just not the same person as he was even as far back as 2002. So although he was portraying a character who is down on the end of his rope, we are now seeing the Jack Nicholson we know today as a man who is down on the end of his rope. And it's just kind of sad to say this, but yeah, I guess the loneliness, the disparity, and the isolation as you get older really takes its toll on a person. Because, you know, when you feel old, you tend to feel useless. And Warren Schmidt is feeling this. But if you look into today with Jack Nicholson, it's just sad to say that he's feeling the same way too. But this movie will really, really gravitate to you. You feel for the characters, you feel sympathy for the characters. Even if the characters are not always that sympathetic, there is a lot of characters in there that are just really easy to relate to because you may have seen a person like this, like these people that are portrayed in the movie. And I think it was really handled very effectively. The script was brilliant. And I think they did a great service to the novel that this movie was based on. And I highly recommend this movie. If I was to give it a scale out of 10, I would give About Schmidt a 9. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be
sorry for making so much noise.
And I will be back again with another movie review. And maybe next time my mother will stay out of the picture.
Just putting up her Christmas tree.
So until next time, this is Eric Red Rider saying keep watching those movies. And I'll see you around. Goodbye. Ahoy. Ahoy, that's, you know, like